considering you just met her. Hey, everybody. Today on our episode, we have Amy Totts joining us. Amy, welcome to the show. We're so happy that you're here. Before we dive into asking you a whole bunch of questions about your life story, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hi, thanks for the invite to the show. I don't know. What do you want to know?
What do you do? What do you do? So you work at a school. Tell us what you do there.
So I am a unit manager at a local high school in Kenosha. I manage the kitchen in the school. There are 24 schools in our school district. We are the second largest school district in the state of Wisconsin. And I run one of the kitchens in one of the high schools.
So you run the kitchen. What does that mean? You have people underneath you that you manage, or what does that entail exactly?
Yes, I have 5 staff members that I have under me. I am the manager, so I do all of the payroll, I do all of the paperwork, I order all the food, and then on a daily basis, I sit down and figure out servings, how many servings need to be prepared for the next day, how many servings need to be cooked for each shift, each lunch shift. We have to make sure we have the proper amount of food to serve every student, and portion sizes. You have to figure out certain things are served at a fourth of a cup. Certain things are served at a half a cup or a full cup of serving, depending on the Wisconsin guidelines.
Hmm. So you're not just a lunch lady, you're the head lunch lady.
Yes, correct.
Can I say that? Can I say that on the episode, please?
Yes.
We don't have to cut that out, do we?
No, you don't have to cut that out. Yes, I am the lead lunch lady.
The lead lady.
But yeah, that's like, as you were describing that, I was like, holy cow, I never realized there's math, there's prep, there's bookkeeping, there's payroll, like all these things that go into that role, right? Like you just think when you hear, lunch lady, you think of like serving the meals and doing that, but it's like all of the prep work behind the scenes. And so yeah, like that's fascinating to me. I'm like, wow, that would probably be I'm not good at math. So I'm sitting there thinking, wow, ordering, like making sure the portion sizes are good and all these things are met. That sounds like it would be kind of not tedious, but like a time consuming job, right? Because you've got to make sure, hey, if I don't do this right, there's going to be kids that don't get their food tomorrow, right? A little bit of pressure there.
Have you ever run out of food?
No, we're not allowed to. That's an absolute big capital letter no. You may not. You have to make sure you have plenty of everything. It's not just, if you think about like mini corn dogs or pizza or chicken nuggets, it's not just that. Like I need to make sure that I have the proper portion of everything, of milk, of fruit, of vegetables, of they, in the Wisconsin guidelines, they have certain things that the students have to have every day in order to get their meal.
So kind of like, I guess, what does like on the job training look like for that? Do they kind of walk you through the guidelines? Is it kind of trial and error? You're learning these things, or what kind of like training did you have to go through to get that position?
So for management, we do it's called a Serve Safe certification. So every 5 years, you have to redo your certification. It is So we're given a book that we have to sit down and we have to read and we have to study. And the book, it runs everywhere from what temperature things have to be in order to be served safely. Like cold stuff versus hot stuff. What temperature things have to be frozen at.
Mm.
And it also runs through like E. coli and salmonella. You have to know how to prevent and avoid those things. And it also runs through things like accepting deliveries and what to look for and what to deny when you get your deliveries, bad produce, things that come in the refrigerator that's not been refrigerated safely that you have to decline. I can't serve it because you're risking germs and, you know, E. coli and salmonella and that stuff I can't have in my kitchen.
Right.
So the serve safe certification, you have to redo it every 5 years as a manager. And then every year we have, as a whole, not just me, but my staff also, we have to have up to, if not more than 4 hours of teaching, just to re-up on what everything has to be temperature wise, refrigerated wise, you know, things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then as far as like a food handler's permit, is that just something that has to be renewed yearly as well for that?
So the food handler permit is the same as the serve safe.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was two separate.
Yeah, it goes together.
Okay. That makes sense.
So I have a question. I'm learning so much. I really am. This is fascinating. So who are you usually interfacing with on a daily basis? Because from my conversation with you before, it sounds like you do interact with the kids at the school, you interact with your employees that you have. I'm sure maybe school administration or like vendors, like who, maybe walk us through like a typical, you know, either day or week or whatever of the people that you're normally seeing.
So I can walk you through both. We can
Yeah.
do every day and then weekly.
Yeah.
So for my normal day, it starts bright and early at 6 o'clock in the morning because I need to be there to get breakfast cooked and ready to serve for the students when they come in at 7. So I have one of the special schools in Kenosha where I have 2 schools in my building.
Mhm.
So the first school comes in at 7 and I feed them breakfast from 7 to 7:30. And then I have a whole different group of students that come in at 7:30 and I feed them breakfast from 7:30 to 8 o'clock. Now it's the same if you think about like lunch versus breakfast, they still do have to have the requirements of you know, a certain amount of fruit, certain amount of grains, and milk for it to be required to be a proper breakfast. So I have to do that also at breakfast time and also at lunch. So then once they're done with breakfast, we clean up and the kids go to their class. And then we start preparing and getting ready for lunch, you know, turning the ovens on, getting the prep food out of the refrigerator and start figuring out portion sizes and how many numbers I need for each shift to make sure I don't run out of food. I deal one-on-one with pretty much all the students. If they have cold lunch, they don't technically have to come up by me. If they want to buy a milk, they can come up and interact with us. But for the most part, like cold lunch kids, they just come in, they sit down. I still will interact with them. I know pretty close to all of the students that are in the schools. So some of them will just stop in just to say hi. Even if they have a cold lunch, they'll swing in by me and, what's up, Miss Tots? So they'll come and say hi to me. But normally it's just the kids that get hot lunch. They'll swing by, grab their hot lunch. We have ID numbers. I don't know if most or all schools do that, but we have ID numbers. So when the kids come through, they put their ID number into the system. We punch in whatever they have for lunch, and then they head on to the table and sit down. On a weekly basis, I still do interact with the kids, but I also interact with principals from both the schools because I have two schools. And then it depends. If they have field trips, the teachers will email me that they need bag lunches. So then I also have to make bag lunches for the field trips. And that also requires the proper, they have to have a cup of fruit. They have to have 3/4 cups
You're
of vegetables.
constantly going through like regulations on the regular, just like, all
Yep.
right, we got to make sure these kids are getting what they're supposed to be required by whatever the law is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We can't force them to eat it, but in order to have them get a proper meal, then we have to make sure that they get, the regulations of the food.
Right. Oh,
That makes sense. And I've always heard stories growing up of like how some kids, maybe their only meal that they get in a day is a lunch, right? And so I think it's great that there's these regulations in place so that at least they're getting a balanced diet, right? Like you said, you can't force them to eat it, but for those that maybe don't have 3 square meals a day, they're probably thinking, yes, I'm going to eat all of this, right? And at least they're getting some nutrition from somewhere, which I think is great. So I'm glad that that's a part of probably most school districts. I don't know for sure, but hopefully it is.
Yeah, I think as far as like Wisconsin state laws with like the balanced meals and stuff like that, I think it's pretty much everybody's also, the same regulations for most states, but I know Wisconsin, so.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I
for
love
sure.
that you get a chance, like it was cool, like you got students coming by, hey Miss Tots, like that's got to be one of the maybe the more fun parts of the job, is just getting to see kids who look up to you and are excited to see you, because it's like, yay, a break from math or whatever else I'm doing during the day. It's like, all right, I get to go hang out and eat some lunch, and say hi to Miss Tots. So, but maybe that's not your favorite part of the job. So tell us a little bit about that, just like the interacting with the students and just like some of the other things that you like about the job.
I would definitely say that's top on my list of best things. Every year, incoming students, and I get that rotation of students that I see them those first couple of weeks to a month where they're nervous and they're shy, and they don't want to talk to me, but I encourage my employees, no matter what, always try to use their first name, because when they put their ID number in, their name pops up on the screen. Always try to say their first name, you know, say hello, say good morning, how is your day? Try to, calm them down, because they are nervous, especially when it's a new school, and welcome them and make them feel, happy about being in lunch, not, oh, I got to go to lunch, you know. So it's definitely one of my highlights of my day is when the kids are coming in, and I've made a great group of friends with a lot of the students that, even if they're having a bad day, I always tell them my office door is always open. I know sometimes going to administration, or, you don't want to tattle on anybody, but you want to talk to somebody about it. My door is always open. So I have students that reach out to me all the time when they've, had a bad day or had a good day or passed a final that they were dreading, they'll come running into the lunchroom and they're like, oh my God, I passed. So it's definitely the highlight of my day. But I also, the teachers and the administration that I have in my building they're amazing. They're great to work with, super supportive.
That's awesome. I like, as you were saying that, I was like reflecting back on my, middle school, junior high years. And like, I grew up in a small town. So chances are you're going to see teachers or, lunch ladies, whoever outside of the classroom. And I remember being like at Walmart and I would see, one of the lunch ladies that I knew and I was like, oh, hey. And I got so excited to say hi to her. Right. And it kind of reminds me of like, finding your tribe, right? Like we hear that all the time, like it takes a village and find your tribe and those kind of sayings. And it's like, yeah, you're part of that kid's team. Like, I think that's awesome that they come to you and are like, I passed my final, and they just feel welcome, right? Like it keeps every aspect of school exciting to be like, hey, I get to go say hi to Mrs. Totts today. Like, that's awesome, right? And how fun. Like, I think that's so fun. And I always, like I said, I always loved running into people that I knew from the school too. Like, I just felt like, oh, I'm so cool. I know somebody, right? Like, it just kind of empowers kids and like boosts them up, which I think is awesome. So
I love that. I love the policy of like just calling kids by name too when they're coming through. It's like so many kids, especially now, like kids are out there so much more with just the social media and like the social networking and stuff like that. But like, at least in my experience and people that I've spoken with and just observations, is that they're so much more connected, but yet it's hard to find people that actually like see you and know who you are and care about you. So the fact that you're just having your team go out of their way to be like, hey Jim, or whatever the kiddo's name is, and like, oh my goodness, like there's something about that, having somebody just call you by name. It's like, even if who cares if it's on the ID card, right? Like, it's just the fact of it feels good when somebody calls you by name, right? I love that. I think that's a great idea that you've implemented there.
Well, and I think, for me, and I also, I know from talking to my team that as we use their names, then it helps us to remember who they are. So then, maybe after like the first week or two of constantly saying, hey, Haley, or hi, Joe, then I can remember that kid's name before they even get their ID in. Like, they're in line and I can see them coming up and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And I can call them by their first name before they get there. So then I'm making that one-on-one contact.
It reminds me of how I feel when I go into the Quick Trip and the employees know my name and I'm like, yes. That's a true story.
I don't care what age you are, right? Like, you feel empowered when they know your name. They're like, hey, I'm somebody. This is awesome.
It feels so good. Like, okay, Angeli doesn't have Quick Trips in Utah, but you're missing out. You have Mavericks though. Mavericks are great. I like Mavericks. So, but right? You go into a place, like a place of business, and if you're a regular or whatever, and somebody's like, hey, Sarah, you're like, like, they know me. Yes, like, you remembered me. That's so that's so exciting. So,
like when you go to the bank.
That too.
You go to the bank.
Yep.
Because I go to the bank way too often. And I go to the bank and they say hi, Amy. And I'm like, hi, I'm here way too often. Oh no.
No, but it's like, don't downplay it. That means a lot to the kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Like poison control or something that like knows it's you calling, right? Because you call too much or something like. It's a bank, right?
Better the bank.
Yeah,
it's better.
Yeah. So that's so cool though. And so I'm curious, Amy, like, how did you get into this role? Like, kind of tell us your career journey of like how you ended up here. Like, what did that look like for you?
So, when I became a mom, I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That was 100% my focus. Stay home, be with my kids. My mom did that for us. So I wanted to extend that for my children. So I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 5 years of my daughter's life until she started school. And then I became the super mom volunteer in the classroom. So I was constantly there helping with everything and anything that I could. And then other people in the school started reaching out. Hey, can I borrow her? Hey, we need her over here. Can she help in the library? So I eventually then moved into the lunchroom and started helping out volunteering. And then the principal at one point said, we should really pay you. So then I got moved to payroll, and I ultimately I was just a supervisor in the cafeteria, helping the kids get seated, opening milks, whatever they needed, just supervising them. And then a position opened. Now that was at an elementary school, and the position in the kitchen opened at the elementary school. So that's actually where I started. Not as much math or ordering or anything. You're heating up meals and, just making sure that everybody gets what they need. And then a unit manager opened at one of the high schools, and they approached me about doing that. So I'm going into my 7th year now at the high school as a unit manager. So that's how I got started, just as a mom volunteer.
That's awesome. I love that because like as you were talking, I was like, that just speaks to like your work ethic and who you are as a person, right? It's like they saw this like go get 'em attitude and you're there, you're showing up. And so they're like, hey, we want you. And so I think for all of our students listening, like a lot of times these opportunities that come into our lives are just by volunteering and showing up. And you never know like who you're going to get connected to that could turn into an opportunity that you can spend, 7 to 10 to 15 years in, right? Because it's just something you love just by being who you are and showing up. And I think that's the power of networking and character building and some of those things that we maybe don't necessarily give as much clout to when we consider like a career or what we want to do, right? So I love that story of just, hey, I just was volunteering and then boom, they wanted me, right? Like I got skills.
I was just
Skills pay the
being
bills.
me.
Yeah.
I was just being me, and I was just there helping out because, the teachers have a lot on their shoulders, especially in elementary, kindergarten, first grade. There's a lot going on, and, simple things like sharpening pencils. If a mom can help out just sharpening pencils or grabbing paper, whatever, it helps the teacher just to be able to focus more on the students. And that's really just how I got started. I just wanted to help.
Mm,
I love
that's
that.
awesome.
That is awesome. So, so you mentioned kind of the favorite part of your job, right? Is there a flip side and maybe some parts that maybe aren't as fun? Because let's be real, that's every job, right? Like you have I really like this, but I don't like this so much.
So, I I don't really have a flip side of it. I mean, it's not all, you know, great every day, obviously, but it's kind of funny that you had mentioned in the past that, you said you weren't that great at math. That's me. I was the kid that, any low math class, I didn't do any of those high math classes in middle school, high school. Actually kind of struggle. I struggle at math. So it was definitely one of those things that when I took the job, it scared me. Like they started throwing all these numbers out at me and I was like, I can't do this job. Like I can't. I'm like, this is way too overwhelming. I don't know what I'm doing. I was scared. I'm like, I felt like I was going to just mess up, and they're like, it's good. You've got this. They did great at teaching me and holding my hand basically. And I just got it. And the old saying of practice makes perfect, it really truly is what happened. Um, Now I basically can do my job in my sleep, and all the math doesn't scare me as much anymore. Um, but yeah, I didn't do very well in math in high school, so it was definitely something that scared me when I started this job.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
Hey, that's a
I could
perfect
relate to
example. We talk about lifelong learning and all that all the time on the podcast. So it's like perfect example, just like
Yep.
keeping at something and being open to the opportunities and just going for it and just being willing to learn, right?
yeah,
Like that's where it starts, is like if you have the willingness and you're willing to overcome some of the obstacles and maybe fears,
Yeah.
good things are to come. So I love that.
yeah, it's definitely one of those things. If I would have just remained scared and didn't open myself to that opportunity, I would not have the great job that I have today and be able to interact with those kids and the teachers. And, you know, I, I had to just push forward and keep doing it every single day and trying my hardest every single day, to get past that fear. And now, like I said, I can do it in my sleep. It doesn't scare me anymore.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and as you were talking too, I was like, and that's the perfect example too of a growth mindset, right? Like you weren't fixed in this, I'm bad at math, therefore I can't do this job. You said, no, I'm going to learn it and I'm going to do it. And that was like growing and learning. And that's something too that we try to instill in students, because it's so easy, even as adults, to just get stuck in that. I mean, I said it myself, like, I'm not good at math, right? Like,
Right.
that's a mindset for me. Like, I'm like, nope, that's my boundary. I'm not good at it, right? But if I shifted my attitude and was like, no, I could learn it, then I could, right? And that's kind of what we do for our students, is like, let's empower them. It is about lifelong learning and a growth mindset and overcoming those stories that we sometimes tell ourselves of, well, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is for you. It's different for everybody, but we all have kind of that inner critic, I guess you could say,
Right.
that's telling us, hey, this is hard, or I don't want to do this, right? But we can. And I love to hear from adults that are like, yeah, like I did it. You could do it too, right? It's never too late. Now, you can always teach was it old dog, new tricks? Is that the saying?
That's exactly the saying. Well, and I'll be the first to tell you, I'll still tell you, I'm not great at math. It's definitely not my strong suit, but it's not something that I let hold me back
Mm.
from trying something new.
Mm.
You know, there's days I do struggle, and I have an assistant and she's amazing. And there's days that the paperwork just whoops me. And I'm just kind of like, okay, guess what? Today is your day because I can't do this today. So my assistant is 100% by my side, and she is amazing. And yeah, there's some days that the math is rough, but I don't let it get me down anymore. Now I just push past it.
I love that. And I think Sarah and I can relate to the, hey, my brain is not braining today, so you've got this, and I'll do it the next.
Yes. It's like a tag team effort oftentimes, like, and it's a struggle today. I need your help. And yeah, and it's great. It's great to surround yourself with people who do support you. And like we'll be the first to admit, like Angela and I years ago decided to start a school. Like, who does that? Like, we're gonna start a school. Great idea. Okay, let's do it. Let's quit our jobs and start a school. So,
Yay!
so the point of that is like we didn't necessarily know everything we needed to know to be able to run a school, an entire school effectively. So what did we do? We surrounded ourselves with people who knew more than we did. So number
Right.
one, we could rely on them to fill in the gaps that we had. But number two, so we could also learn from them, right? Like as long as you're not the smartest person in the room, like you can always grow and learn, right? So surround yourself with people who know more than you. You can learn from them. You can constantly be growing. And that's what we did. We got, advisory board, people with way more experience than we could even imagine, and we did it, and we fought through the obstacles that we had and the fears that we had,
Mhm.
and you just do it. And just to your point, what you were describing is it really carries over into many different professions doing that. Like it doesn't matter what it is that you do, there's always going to be some kind of obstacle or something that maybe scares you a little bit about the job. But the bottom line is you overcome it. You surround yourself with people who are rowing in the same direction as you, that want to help you and want to see you succeed. And you just do it. Just go for it. So,
Yeah,
and
I think it's very
same for lunch,
important.
ladies, Amy.
Oh, trust me, there's many, many days that I could not do my job without my assistant. She is, and she knows it. And I tell her on a daily basis, she is my backbone. And we just blend and mesh well together. She's great. She's amazing. And I couldn't do my job without her. So
That's awesome. Well, and I
Doesn't that,
think your attitude is great too, right? Like, I think that's also something that maybe some of our high schoolers might not think about is like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have fellow coworkers that I'm going to have to work with, right? And sometimes personalities are different, work ethic is different, the style of communication is different. And so finding how you can interact with people and like have that relationship based approach, even with your coworkers, can make or break work, really, right? Like you can, yeah. So I love that you have a good relationship. And that's kind of why Sarah and I ended up where we are, because when we worked together at other schools, we were like, hey, we work well together. Like she gets what I'm saying. I understand what she's saying. We make it work, right? You can bring that cohesiveness to anything.
we have the same strange sense of humor.
That helps
No,
too.
but it's true. Like, having that great work environment with people that you enjoy being around, like can just it's that point of like, I love going to work because I have people on my team that are supportive and friendly and fun to be around, versus like if you can't stand your coworkers, it
right.
it makes even a job that you're passionate about horrible.
Yeah.
So,
Very
and
important.
sometimes that's out of our control and we just have to make the best of the situation. But it's awesome when you can find a great team to work with and everybody's got the same end goal and you're all, on the same page trying to do the same things, and you can pick up, where somebody else might have a weakness, they might have a strength, and you guys just work together. That's awesome. So I love that you have that in your workplace. That's such a blessing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I tell her every single day, because she is my blessing. And it's so funny that you said that, because that's exactly how we are together. Where I am weak, she is strong, and where she is weak, I am strong. So we complement each other amazingly. And I couldn't have a better assistant. I couldn't ask for anybody better. When I'm having a rough day, she'll just take it from me and she's like, I got this, and she'll run with it. And I will step back and I'll let her do it because I know she's got it.
That's awesome. Well, and I love that you also express that appreciation, right? Like she knows that you appreciate her, which I think is a huge part of, yeah, keeping that good relationship, keeping a good, positive work environment. Because sometimes, like when you're in the thick of work, it's hard to remember, like, oh, I'm appreciated and I'm needed here. And so to hear that is like validating for anybody. And so I love that that's kind of part of your practice, which is awesome.
Well, I try as a manager. We've all been in, many different jobs where you've had maybe somebody that's not super great at management skills. I've had I've had plenty managers in my life that were not great communicators, or, this is how you do the job, do it my way, and I don't want to listen to anything else, and I try not to be that person. I have a small crew, but they all know I appreciate them. And I am always expressing, I always walk past them and I'm like, are you good? Are you okay? Do you need anything? And they always laugh at me and they're like, yep, I'm good. I'm like, just checking. Just want to make sure you're okay. Because if you need me, I'm here. I'm always expressing my appreciation and that I am there for them and always willing to help out. No job is below me. Yes, I'm the manager, but I'll step in and mop a floor. I'll step in, as much as I don't want to admit it, but I'll step in and clean up throw up. It's not below me. I'll do it if it needs to be done. And I think that it's just really good management skills, to be that person that is not afraid to step in everybody else's shoes and do that job.
Totally.
Hopefully
think
the
that's
throw up thing doesn't happen too often.
Yep.
Unless yesterday's meatloaf became today's sloppy joes.
You just had to get the lunch lady reference in, didn't you, Sarah?
Sorry.
Yeah, you do
Sorry,
it.
I had to. Listeners, I apologize. I can't
No, you
resist.
don't.
I don't. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
And for those listening that might be too young to remember what that is, look up Lunch Ladyland with Adam Sandler and Chris Farley, and then you'll totally get it.
The link will be in the show notes. I'm kidding.
We're adding it to the show notes, apparently. So
It's out there for the world to hear now.
it is. It is awesome. Well, Amy, we want to be respectful of your time, but this is a question that we ask to all of our interviewees, just because we think it's fun, right? Because hindsight is always 20/20 as we're looking back. So if you were able to go back to your high school self and give yourself advice, what advice would you give to yourself in high school?
Oh, for me, that's actually a really easy question to answer. When I was in high school, I just wanted to do my work and be done. I always looked forward to the end of the day to leave. I looked forward to graduation. I just wanted to graduate and get out of there. And I look back now and I should not have been that way. I should not have had that mindset. I didn't get involved. I didn't do any clubs. I didn't get into music. I didn't get into choir. I didn't do sports. And I regret all of it. I should have been involved because now I realize the type of person that I am is that person. I love to be involved. I love to help out, volunteer. And I think I let that fear get a hold of me while I was in high school. I was afraid of being accepted and I shouldn't have been. And I should have, I don't know, did photography or got on the yearbook, or I just should have did stuff and I didn't. And I regret every second of it.
Wow.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Carpe diem, right? Like living in the moment, participating, all of that. I think that's stellar advice.
It is. It's great advice. And at least, now, granted, high school's, in the past, and there's nothing you can do to change that now, but at least you figured that out at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like it may have taken like having a child and then starting to volunteer or whatever, whenever, you made that shift in your mindset of like, I'm going to get out there, you at least did it, right? You're doing it now. And now you have a super cool job that, like, honestly, I don't think most of our students would think of like, hey, this could be a really great opportunity to look into. Not every student wants to pursue higher education or, become a financial advisor or whatever, something like this where you still get to interact with kids, be in a school and interact on kind of a cool level. Like you're not
Yeah.
a teacher, you're not having to worry about necessarily like the classroom management part of it.
Nope.
You get to connect with kids on a completely different level, and you're surrounded by a cool team of people that you can manage. And yeah, there's, maybe some detail parts of it that honestly, I don't think Angela and I thought of, like all that goes into it. I wouldn't have even thought of that, but there's just a lot of cool things about your career and what you do. And I love the fact that we've been able to showcase this as an opportunity for students to look into, or if not something like this, something similar. So I just think it's really neat. And I'm glad that you're here telling us your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today and teaching us all about it. Cause yeah, I was like, I learned loads of information about this career and like what it entails, like I just don't think I had ever really put that much thought into it as like, oh yeah, there's like who is running the kitchen, right? Like who is in charge of that, right? And so it's really cool that there's an inside look into what really goes on behind the scenes, right? Of just any job in general. But yeah, thanks for shedding some light on lunch lady land, as they say.
Thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
Amy.
you. Appreciate it.